Red Bull's Max Verstappen battled internally to maintain his focus. His performance at the 5.451-kilometer Shanghai International Circuit clearly outclassed his rivals, leaving them in his wake. The race unfolded as feared by many fans, reminiscent of Suzuka's concerns. The intervention of two safety cars mid-race tempered the expected gaps at the finish line of the Chinese Grand Prix, notably benefiting Lando Norris, who finished with a 13-second margin instead of what could have been a deficit of about 30 seconds. Despite this, the McLaren MCL38 of Lando Norris capitalized on unique track conditions, enabling him to deliver a flawless performance, unlike his performance in the sprint race on Saturday, when he made a mistake at the start and lost the possibility of fighting for the win. Sergio Perez, despite securing a podium, fell short due to his inability to challenge the McLaren, particularly on equal stints with hard tires. Max Verstappen's dominance was evident, particularly in his mastery of corner exits, where he outshone his competitors, leaving Lando Norris trailing by 7/8 tenths in comparable sequences. Adjustments made by Max Verstappen and Lando Norris at the end of Saturday's sprint race in Shanghai further underscored their adaptability and drive for improvement, with clear results on Sunday. Ferrari team principal Frédéric Vasseur admitted the Maranello team's failure to maximize the current SF-24 package, addressing the issue with calm after the Chinese Grand Prix. The Ferrari duo of Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz ultimately endured a subpar weekend in China, marked by a lack of teamwork and on-track battles that were counterproductive for the Italian side and led to time losses both in Saturday's sprint event as well in Sunday's main race. Despite high expectations ahead of the Chinese Grand Prix, the promised performance failed to materialize, with technical missteps on Saturday exacerbating the situation. Surprisingly, optimal settings on hard tires, considered ideal for the SF-24 single-seater, did not yield the desired results. Despite the fact that Charles Leclerc displayed slight superiority over Carlos Sainz, both drivers struggled, squandering precious laps in their attempt to turn on the Pirelli tires that, when finally utilized at a better potential, were already worn or at least past their peak in performance. Charles Leclerc's relatively low degradation, albeit better than Red Bull by 0.090 milliseconds lap, hinted at untapped performance potential. While Fernando Alonso's overtaking move on Sergio Perez in the start of the race could have provided a great chance for Ferrari to make a better comeback, the Maranello team failed to capitalize fully on strategic opportunities, further highlighted by their struggle to exploit the safety car period. The SF-24 car, trailing Max Verstappen by 9 tenths, showcased a stark deviation from Ferrari's usual performance in the start of the 2024 Formula One Championship, doubling in fact the average gap observed in previous races. Nico Hülkenberg's initial overtake on the SF-24 car of Charles Leclerc underscored the team's tire management challenges. Ferrari team boss Frédéric Vasseur candidly acknowledged the need for introspection, emphasizing the absence of excuses in light of shared uncertainties. From the early stages of the race, both Ferrari cars rapidly lost 2 positions to George Russell and Nico Hülkenberg, partly due to an internal struggle with Charles Leclerc focusing on defending his position against his Maranello teammate. Right from the start of the Chinese Grand Prix, the Red Bull cars demonstrated their usual superiority, with Fernando Alonso experiencing difficulties after a few laps due to high degradation on his AMR24, despite the updates brought to 2 weeks ago in the Japanese Grand Prix weekend in Suzuka. Surprisingly, McLaren maintained a strong pace thanks to excellent race management by Lando Norris, controlling degradation and maintaining a gap to Red Bull of about half a second overall, pending data analysis from the Chinese GP. The worst-performing Ferrari of the season, by a significant margin, finished 4th and 5th in Shanghai, 24 seconds behind Verstappen in just 25 laps after the restart of the second safety car. Carlos Sainz and especially Charles Leclerc never felt comfortable with the car, even during the race. The adjustments to the SF-24's setup between Saturday's sprint event and the qualifying session did not yield the desired results, and on Sunday, a significant portion of performance was lacking, along with serious tire heating problems. The Reds were on par with the competitiveness of Mercedes and Aston Martin, with the meager consolation of beating both George Russell and Fernando Alonso, who, due to a lack of hard tire sets, had to make a pit stop after the safety car entry, finishing in 7th place. While Mercedes grappled with ongoing performance issues, Lewis Hamilton's commendable recovery of 9 positions contrasted with George Russell's inability to challenge Carlos Sainz. The team led by Toto Wolff alongside McLaren had the clear goal of partially rectifying some key shortcomings with forthcoming updates, whereas Scuderia Ferrari opted for a more conservative approach, maintaining its focus on all the plans that had been established since the start of the season following the pre-season testing session at the Bahrain International Circuit. Although minor upgrades are still contemplated for Miami, the primary focus remains on the Imola race weekend, when Ferrari will introduce its first major aerodynamic package that should bring significant improvement both in terms of lap times, but also the future development direction for the second part of the 2024 Formula One Championship. Despite reassurance from Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz regarding Miami, deficiencies in certain configurations highlighted areas for progress. Beyond the frontrunners, Fernando Alonso's skill shone once again, despite the fact that he had limited opportunities to score more points for Aston Martin given his overall race pace. Nico Hülkenberg's Haas delivered a solid performance, securing a solitary point behind the top teams. Behind the satisfaction of this performance, however, there is a negative record, that of the most Grand Prix races competed without a victory. With 208 races in Formula One, Nico Hülkenberg has now equaled the late Andrea de Cesaris, who was in Formula One from 1980 to 1994. Unlike the German, who also lacks podium appearances, the Italian concluded 5 races among the top 3. While Alpine continued to grapple with major challenges, Esteban Ocon's proximity to point-scoring positions at least offered a glimmer of hope, validating the efficacy of recent updates according to French team principal Bruno Famin. Formula One's focus now shifts towards Scuderia Ferrari's pursuit of critical updates at upcoming races, namely the Miami Grand Prix, and most importantly the Emilia-Romagna Grand Prix in Italy, although the 2024 F1 Championship is unfolding with Red Bull's Max Verstappen seemingly easing towards his 4th title in a row, despite the fact that the season still has a substantial distance to cover. Both Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz expressed anticipation for the upcoming Ferrari SF-24 updates. The Monegasque driver conveyed his optimism, emphasizing the significance of the upgrade. He mentioned that it should assist the Italian side, underscoring the importance of focusing on it now as it will determine their direction for the rest of the 2024 Formula One season. On the other hand, Carlos Sainz highlighted the significant deficit between the Maranello team and Red Bull, which was clear over the weekend, stressing the importance of developments and updates for such specific track conditions as the ones encountered at the Shanghai International Circuit during the Chinese Grand Prix weekend, with cold temperatures and a very abrasive track surface.